bridge collapsed. The mountain road washed out. All the signs are obscured by fog. Your only directions are detours. Eventually it dawns on you. Sometimes you need to get lost to discover where you're supposed to be. Welcome to Merlin's Barn.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Merlin's Barn, broadcasting to you from Fort Blanket, south of the Yukon. Tonight we have myself, Matt,
Nicole,
and T.
Yep. Merlin is not with us tonight, but instead we have a special guest. We actually have an author interview, the author of a great book, Alaska or Rust, about going along the Alaska Highway on its 75th anniversary of its construction. And that author is...
May, we tricked you. I'm so sorry. You're obviously, inevitably, terribly disappointed, bereft, bewildered, lost, plain sad. And I apologize for a moment. Now you have to get over it. There, we just lost 5 listeners.
But we might gain 5 other ones.
Yeah, we got 5
Even
more.
swap.
5 more. Yeah, there was one podcast that I tried like an April Fool's prank that went so badly. I think it was Beyond the Breakers.
Oh, no.
It went so badly they lost, I believe, a massive amount of listeners just because people were so annoyed with it.
Oh, no.
I remember starting to listen to the episode and just going, I think this is an April Fool's one. And I'm just going to,
I
was
remember
like,
that vaguely.
it's like, I'm just going to give up and wander off from this. And then the following week, I think they were apologizing for it. I was like, oh, no, they were trying to be funny.
So we're trying to be funny, but we kept it to like 25 seconds. So
And then
hopefully you're still with us.
Then I started babbling.
And if you're not still with us, you're not hearing me now anyway. So this is for everyone else. We have no fortune cookies tonight because we had Italian.
Yeah, I don't... Do we feel okay about that?
They gave us Andy's mints.
Yes, I'm okay with it because the mints were really good.
Yeah, the mints were very good.
That's the Italian place equivalent of fortune cookies.
yes.
Just
I
got the
guess.
fortune part, I guess.
They don't lie and make you sad like the fortune cookies.
They don't fail at their job like the fortune cookies. They don't concern you about the people in the factory like the fortune cookies.
You don't know that. You don't know what's in those factories.
Well, I wasn't concerned about it, though. The fortune cookie factories I'm concerned about, though. But we'll stop there because it got really dark the last time, and then it got worse and worse and worse.
Do Andy's mints actually come from South America?
Oh, no. I don't know.
You're the one who would know about this.
Yes.
I don't think so. We'll
Stay
have
in
to
for
look that
it.
up and get back to you.
Future
Yes, I feel
deep
like I
dive
should know this.
episode.
Yes.
So tonight we're going to talk about the Alaska Rust trip, because part of what started this podcast was, well, actually, part of what started this podcast was all of us being stuck on a weird road trip to South Bend, Indiana, which will be an episode or 2 in itself down the road. But that was a road trip, and that led to sort of the 3-year development of this. And one of the things that we've discussed as we
3
have,
years.
3 years. One of the things we've discussed as we pull this together is detours, and the Alaska Rust trip, which is a book, which I'll put a link on the Substack, or you can go to my WordPress and find it. Don't worry, I'm not trying to push it to make money. It took since 2018 to this is 2025, and what was it, like 2 months ago? I finally got a royalties check on it.
For what, $20?
Yeah, for $20.
Right. I think the math works out that Merlin loses 82 cents every time someone buys a book.
Yeah, well, apparently I make just enough that I got that $20 after 7 years. But yeah, there's been a lot of occasions I've sold it for. I've bought a stack of them and sold them for less than I paid for them, because it's not like an ego-stoking thing. It's just people like it, and I'd like to price it where it's affordable, and it's a book with well over 200 color pictures in it, so it's not cheap to produce. But yeah,
You also keep it in the library for your students.
yeah, the kids like it. That's fun.
That's always one of the fun little, like, Hanson Easter eggs.
You know, I think the really fun thing is when people realize that I don't just have a book by a guy named Merlin Hanson, but it's just that they don't call me the right name. We finally do have one teacher who actually regularly refers to me as Merlin, and that of course is Mr. Willits in the upper school.
That's fair.
I'm just like, yay, somebody actually refers to me to something I respond to. This is wonderful. So back on this, though. This is a story of just an absolute epic road trip. 28 days on the road, going to insane places, meeting really amazing people with just taking one detour here or taking somebody's recommendation there to go to another place. Multiple border crossings, which will be an episode in itself. But the key here is just road trip. And so just for a brief riff on road trips, what are our feelings on road trips?
I liked them initially, but I think Nicole can back me up on this. We drove out to Wisconsin this past summer, and it was 14 hours, I think we did in one day. Was it 14 hours?
Yes.
Yeah. And,
Oh, no.
reached the border between Illinois and Wisconsin. It's like, all right, we've reached Wisconsin, and there's 3 more hours to where we're going.
And Matt drove the entire way, virtually nonstop.
Oh boy.
And that's when we learned 12 hours is enough.
Yeah, that's sort of beyond my... I like 9 hours. I'll push to 12 hours if I have to. A story that will come up later is I really don't like 19 hours. I'm against that. I never want that to happen again. But I think 9 hours is my sweet
Yeah,
spot.
8 or 9, I think, is much more preferable to 14. I mean, on the way back from that trip, we stopped in Chicago, and then we drove 9 back from Chicago the rest of the way, and that was way better than
That was a nice midway point.
I'm just the one you don't want to have driving on road trips.
That's because cars put you to sleep.
It's not. I literally don't know. It's just I kind of like let it happen because like only if it's safe, mind you.
Cruise control has its limitations, though.
Yes.
No, but it's a regular occurring thing that like even if I try to fight it, I will pass out in the passenger seat.
You basically epitomize that old joke. I want to die in my sleep like my grandfather.
I'm
Not
a passenger princess.
Not screaming like everybody else in the car.
Well, I
screaming
mean, there
like
was
his
that
passengers.
one time when we were in the mountain and we lost our brakes, and I was asleep the whole time.
Yeah, that was going to East Broad Top, and I decided I made as the brakes faded on this steep grade, very narrow mountain road where we were flat towing a World War II Jeep behind
Oh boy.
Snow White / Burnt Marshmallow, the giant 3/4 ton Dodge truck. That really looks more like Burnt Marshmallow now, and I felt the brakes fading. Yeah, s'more has been another option. I realized that it was possibly better to let Tasha sleep through,
Rather than have an anxiety attack.
the near-death experience that they couldn't control.
Yeah, that's why I don't like driving. I don't know what other people are doing. There's a lot of sounds and lights, and that just doesn't work for my brain. It just doesn't work. I do remember this one kind of fun one, though. Well, it wasn't the road trip part that was fun. It was the fact that it was for my birthday, and Amelia and I went to Ocean City, and she managed to lock the keys in her car as we were trying to leave the hotel.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, luckily one of the windows was cracked, right? So, we ended up like walking what felt like forever on my 21st birthday to find a hardware store to be like, what can we finagle together to reach through the window to get the keys? After she told me not to do something specific and I did it anyway, I'm the one who got the keys out.
What did you end up making?
It was like a ruler and like I think paper clips and maybe like some wire hangers. I don't know. I have a picture somewhere.
Yeah, we need to see that one.
I will find the picture.
Ruler and paperclip sounds like a good start to that.
But like she was so scared that I was going to like nudge it the wrong way. I'm like, no. The loop is in just the right place. I can hook this. And I did.
Oh, she was afraid you were going to, like, nudge it. It was going to fall.
Yeah.
Just fall into the floor.
Yeah,
or, like,
just make it.
and be, like, out of reach entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like power locks, or how was the look? You couldn't reach the. You couldn't
So
unlock
the-
it.
It was just so ever so slightly the window
Oh, it
was
was-
cracked.
Oh, it was barely cracked, so you needed.
Yeah.
Thin.
So like we literally needed to build something to get the keys back out. Guess that.
I've been there. I've been there. Definitely.
You had to save me from that the other week.
Yeah, that's why it's nice when your partner happens to be like 15 to 20 minutes away when you walk yourself out
With
of
the
the car.
spare key.
Yeah, which anybody can do. I'm thinking, for me, road trips. It just popped into my head. I'm glad it just popped into my head. Growing up, I don't think I've mentioned it yet. I grew up with this 1956 Porsche that Dad still has, and don't get too excited, folks, because it's a rather battered specimen. He's had it since 1965. And I grew up with that in the garage, and there was a little black notebook that, like, there was this little room I'd call the bomb shelter down in the basement, and I would find things in there that would start my collections. Like the first antique camera I ever found was down there. It was my grandfather's from the 20s, and then my father used to hike with it in the mountains. I found this little black book. One funny page was apparently it had been the little black book at one point, and there was a page with a note from my mother that just said, "This is the little no-no book. I'm watching you," in a grumpy face. And I
Your
asked,
mother is terrifying.
"What's that?"
Your mother is terrifying.
Well, so I asked him about that. He says, "Yeah, I then removed all the phone numbers after that." But what was really cool in it that I found, and I think I probably found it when I was like 11 or 12 or something, was the trip diary of this epic journey where he and his friend Brick, so it was Brick and Dick. Yeah, it was Brick and Dick. Brick and Dick's Excellent Adventure. And they got into they took his Karmann Ghia because he didn't think the Porsche would make it.
That reminded me of Cheech and Chong. And did I tell you the convention I show went to, Chong was there?
Oh, that's too cool.
Yeah.
That's too cool. So Brick and Dick took the Karmann Ghia.
Wait, they took the Karmann Ghia because they thought the Porsche wouldn't make it.
Yeah, they thought the Porsche wouldn't make it. However, they did take the seats out of the Porsche and put them in the Karmann Ghia,
Comfy.
which I'm very sad right now because my dad had them reupholstered and he did not save the old leather, which I would love to have done some sort of tribute thing with because it did all those hundreds of thousands of miles that are on that car. And they went, so it's got this great, I think Brick drove almost all the way west. And so there's this wonderful commentaries where they're like, they definitely hated Wall Drug. There was explicit commentary on that. I think one point it just goes, there's just a note that says coyote scene, Hansen spots butterfly. Yes.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, there's a lot of like things that are just like, yeah, that's a very Merlin or his dad type thing.
They were driving through Ohio? Because, I mean, that's about as exciting as Ohio is.
But yes.
I just remembered another story. You finish yours, and
Okay.
then I've got another.
But they made it to California, and then I noticed like the handwriting changed. It turns to my dad's very engineer perfect handwriting partway through California, and then it's just sort of just notes. And so I asked him about that, and he said, "Well, Brick discovered drugs, and I wasn't interested, so I left him there."
Okay.
So he left Brick in California, and he went and explored SoCal, and then he got to the point where and this is just very much if you meet my dad, you just get this. He just decided, okay, I've seen everything I want to see. I'm driving home. So he just did that. No hotels, nothing like that. He said every 3 hours he'd pull over, put some gas in the Karmann Ghia, find a diner, get a slice of pie and a cup of coffee, throw water in his face, and then get in the car and drive for a few more hours, and then do it again. And he did this, I think he said, for like 36 hours or something. And so he got to the East Coast and got to his parents and walked in sort of blearily and said he was going to bed. And when he woke up, I think it was 2.5 days later.
Wow.
See, because he wandered downstairs and he said he said good morning, and his mother looks at him and says it's evening, and he goes, "Oh, I slept that long," and she says, "Do you know what day it is?" And turns out he slept for like 2.5 days, and he asked her, she said, "Well, we just leaned in to make sure you're breathing, and you were." So that was my very practical grandparents.
But what happened to Brick?
I think he was actually at their wedding. I think he was in the groom's party at their wedding. So he did reappear after California. He wasn't totally abandoned, I guess.
So this
made it
reminds
home.
me, my father, He went to visit his brother in California. And I think it was like a 64 or 66 Mercury Comet.
Ooh.
He had taken the back seat out and put it in the rafters of the garage.
It's still there to this day.
Oh, no, she sold it on eBay later.
Oh, okay.
Well, because the rest of the car is not there anymore because he drove to California. He had taken the back seat out so he could put a mattress to sleep in the back of the car.
Oh, wow.
Drove to California, and then the engine completely burned up. I think it was in Arizona on his drive back. So he gave it to a service station and took his toolbox and rode a Greyhound bus the rest home to Long
Oh,
Island.
my goodness.
What does gave it mean? That sounds very ambiguous.
Like, instead of trying to sell the car or anything, he was like, would you like a car? It's got a burned up engine, but you can have it. I'm going to take the bus home.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was just like I'm leaving it here and abandoning or actually handing over.
Nope, he did some sort of a handing over situation. And years later, we were up in Long Island packing up my grandmother's stuff. She was going to move into a nursing home, and we pulled a this near mint condition back seat to a 64 Mercury Comet out of the rafters of the garage.
Oh, my goodness.
Somebody got it up there.
My dad did, like when he was like 18.
Yeah.
Tasha, you had one more story?
Yes. So when they were younger, my dad and his buddies used to go camping quite frequently, often up in Montana. So often the car would be packed with, I believe, like the 4 or 5 of them to the brim with camping gear. And in the woods, they would lose track of where the border between Montana and Canada was. And so there's a lot of accidental border hopping. But then they found like this really good sandwich shop and specifically hopped the border for the sandwich shop. Like that was a deliberate decision.
Fair.
Apparently, I hear it was really good. But apparently at that point, some cop had caught onto them and been like, why is this car back and forth, what is happening? So the guys got pulled over, and I believe my dad and my uncle offered to assist the cop in emptying the trunk because he had to do a full search at this point because it is loaded to the brim with camping gear. You're going to want help, sir. And he's like, no, you all stay in the car. And so what happened to be packed on top was coffee service. It was the coffee service on top. Seeing as you can't really take liquid milk camping with you, there's a giant bag of white powder sitting in the trunk. And the cop just picks it up and says, "Great googly moogly," puts it back in very gingerly and closes the trunk. Some words were exchanged from my understanding, proved it was coffee creamer, and the campers were on their way.
Wow.
Great googly moogly. That is a direct quote from my father.
I love the use of that.
Same. It's so Canadian. Just so. The only other time I've heard it is Maggie and the Big Ferocious Beast, I think is what that show was called. It was a good show. But he was always like, "Great googly moogly."
That silence with our sponsors.
Yes, please
Which we have none.
sponsor us. Once again, a huge shout out and thank you to our 2 paid members. That's
The McDowells and McDonahues.
and Donahue's. It's not a McDonahue. Don't make them Scottish.
Look.
This could be a real problem. I mean,
No, I know.
that's-
And I apologize.
Yeah, Irish Scottish. It's almost like the Swedes and the Danes at each other, which
Oh,
we won't even
God.
get into. It's a bad thing. So to start us off with, because we're going to
You
do.
notice there's people villaging with like the horned caps, and it's just a whole mess. Like,
Created problems again.
We discussed that last episode.
Look, I was born and worldwide issues started. They just keep happening.
oh, that's right. Yeah. That was really awkwardly close, wasn't it?
2 days. Yeah, 2 days.
So to get us started on the story that's going to be probably handful of episodes. I can't imagine, because you're going to end up with how this trip happened, a murder board of border crossings and rejections, numerous almost out of gases, and meeting with a wide variety of people, and essentially 28 days of driving and camping nonstop. Because I have problems. I think all of us had problems. Well, actually, a bunch of them didn't have problems. They had money. So
You were the one with problems.
I think we all had problems, actually. I mean, what normal person sits there and goes, I'm going to spend 28 days on the road in a vintage Jeep? And so,
And who was closest to the Alaska Highway to start with? Because so many of these Jeeps, and I read the book, were coming from like the East Coast.
really nobody. I mean, the closest were the mid-country. So you had a couple out around St. Louis, but that was really about it. I mean, everybody else was.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like you had people in Seattle or Vancouver who were doing this, who were already nearby.
No, and this.
No, you had to drive all the way across the country to even start the trip.
And the idea came from, to give some background to it, back around 2015 when the idea came about, there were a handful of vintage Jeep restoration shops in the tri-state, in the Mid-Atlantic region. You had Hanson Mechanical, which is me. You had Henry Welch Restorations. You had Lime Street Carriage, which was my friend Bill Reese in Lancaster, and he had a beautiful, like, old Studebaker carriage dealership that he had restored. You had Vintage Four Wheel Drive, which is in York and is still toddling along a little bit. And then a couple others here and there, but that was sort of the core group. And a lot of us would get together and go off-roading and such. There's still there's still a couple communities doing that, but the shops are largely gone. Henry retired. Bill reached the point that a lot of us reach, where it's just like, I am fed up with people and customers, and I'm going to do something else. So I'm sort of a quiet last man standing, and I really just want to get the Jeeps out of here so I can fix my own stuff. But Bill and Henry, Bill Reese and Henry Welch, had been talking, and they came up with this idea of, why don't we do the Alaska Highway in vintage Jeeps on the 75th anniversary? And then Bill gets a hold of me, because I'd find Jeeps, he'd sell them to customers. It was really, we had too much business. So it was a very amicable relationship between all the shops. We all got along well. We knew each other's specialties and stuff like that. Bill and Henry manufactured a lot of items. So Bill gets a hold of me in summer of 2015, when he and Henry have come up with this idea, and says, we're running the Alaska Highway. And I'm sitting there going, okay. And he says, we're going to do it in 2017, so it's the 75th anniversary of the construction of the Alaska Highway. And I'm sitting there going, all right, and realizing that I'm broke and I'm working 80 hours a week just to try and make ends meet. And so they discuss it. It's discussed a little bit, and I sort of put it out of my mind. And the most I got it into my mind was, I had this idea of this little home-built truck that I purchased. It's a Willys Jeep that was expanded into a pickup truck, and thinking, oh, that would be really cool to do like a diesel conversion on and upgrade things and ride across the country in that. So that was my first idea, but then I was just like, this isn't happening. So 2016 comes around, I think it was summer, and a few things happened that summer, where Bill gets a hold of me and says, well, we're putting up a website. I believe it was around that summer that Dave Eilers got involved, and Dave Eilers and his wife ran a website called ewillies.com that was all Willys Jeeps and Willys Jeep listings and parts and research and stuff. And I'm still sitting there going, okay, that's great. I don't know how I'm affording this, or how I'm doing this, or how I would take the time off to drive across the country and up a highway, or what Jeep would even make it. And still thinking of the little pickup truck Jeep. But around that time, I forget where I was coming back from. And I never pick up, I think everybody here can attest to the fact that I don't pick up the phone, except for this evening when Ernie called. And I got this number that just, out of curiosity, I picked it up, and it was a guy who had gone and recreated the original Willys Jeep engines. He had a manufacturing facility in China. He had, on his own, done the research, blueprinted, redesigned it, had produced the engine, was trying to sell it, got a hold of one of the big distributors who offered him basically $100 more than it cost him to make the engine. And he got a hold of me, and he says, and he just goes, because I had a good web presence at the time. There's still over 11,000 people following the Instagram, and I don't understand why, because I think I post a picture once a month now. And the long and the short with that was I had him send me all the testing information. I did a blog article on it, and the next thing we know was we got a call from Rick Payway of JP Magazine, and JP Magazine featured the engine. And that project helped fund this trip, because suddenly I was sales and marketing for this small engine company. Mm-hmm. And as we got into the fall, Bill gets a hold of me again and says there's a website and you're on it. And I'm sitting there going, no, this really isn't good, because okay, I'm selling this engine, I've taken it to a show at this point, but I'm still like pulling to make ends meet and looking at this going, how the heck are we going to do this? But sure enough, he's pulling together this cast of characters on his website, including Henry Welch. And there were some vehicles that didn't make it on the trip, but it was a neat array of vehicles from like a forward control, I think it was like a tow truck, to some CJ2As, to like, and they put up a picture of my World War II Jeep, which same year as the last, Mortimer. And to give you some background on the Jeeps, there's two Jeeps in this story. There's Mortimer, who's old and cranky, and is a World War II Jeep from 1942, just like the Alaska Highway.
He's a puppy. Shush.
He's an old and cranky puppy, if that's possible. But yes, he's a puppy. And then there's Junior, who I really think of more as the puppy. And Junior at the time, I think we'd had for basically a year. And he's a 2013 black four-door Jeep. So you have these two vehicles, the World War II Jeeps up on their website. And I'm like, okay, it's on the website. I have no freaking clue how we're affording this. We start to get into the spring, and the engine company offered to help sponsor the trip, and so they put in money towards the whole group going. And then the engine company, to prove the engine, gave me a prototype engine block to build and drive on the trip. And so the fun thing that we did with the engine block was took the engine block into school, because I'm like, what would be more fun than having the kids build this engine? I've got pictures in the book and stuff of them doing this. And meanwhile, we've got that, and we have a customer who suggested, why don't you get a separate hood, grab one of the hoods out of your shop, and get customers to sponsor the trip. And the suggested amount was $250, and they can put their name or some relative's name who served in the served in the military. And so we started having customers donate money to who just came out of the blue and donated money to have their names put on the hood. We had an FOP lodge out of Westminster donate money. So as we got the money donated, we put money into engine parts. So we had an FOP lodge donate money. So we had the kids, we bought the parts for the engine. Kids were building the engine at school. The cutest thing is teaching the kids to do pistons, and having them doing piston rings and walking in and having one of them just declaring piston rings friends or enemies if they're not staying on the piston.
That sounds about right.
So I walk in and there's this little boy going, friend, poing, toddles over, gets the part, picks it up, gets the piston ring pliers, and friend, click, friend. And that was, and that was how it went.
Sounds like your kids.
Yeah. They had a blast. And we had them out to the shop where the kids and like one of the boys' grandfathers who used to be a racer, they came out and they installed the engine in Mortimer, which was really, really cool experience. Meanwhile, I was like, well, the school does these really cool summer grants. My school is Boys Latin in Baltimore. And so I put in for a summer grant, just explaining we were going to run the Alaska Highway in vintage Jeeps on the 75th anniversary. And so the last assembly of the school year, the closing convocation, I get called up onto the stage and am given a very healthy check by the school to help us on our way on this trip, which was a nice amount of gas money. I mean, this was a nice healthy check. So all of a sudden, okay, we had that windfall. I think it was within a day or two, one of my students who was then in the high school calls me in the library and says, Mr. Hanson, are you going to be in today? And I said, yes. And he says, my father wants to see you. And so his father comes in around noon, and showing him some projects in the workshop that's off of the library. Yes, we do have to give context, there is a workshop off the side of the library where we've done everything from build Jeeps to scale models to tear apart a World War II motorcycle. Because it's that kind of library. That's normal, isn't it?
It's the best kind.
Okay. Maybe it's not normal.
It's more fun than mine.
Yeah, but you've got neat little nooks, and your library's made out of like old silos and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's not like a living space.
Okay, yeah, mine's...
Except for my loft, because I live there. But that's...
Your library's like a little hobbit land in my world.
Yeah, and I'm the hobbit inhabitant. Yeah.
So he, my student's father turns to me and he says, I'm not going to mention any names, but he says, my son's out in the barn tearing down old motorcycles every night. And I said, okay. He says, I blame you for that. I was like,
logical conclusion.
I was like,
Yep.
okay. He says, I want to help with the trip, and hands me another very healthy check, very close to what the school had given me.
That's nice.
Yeah. And then...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then a couple days later, I had this one customer who didn't ask for his name to be put on the hood, but I put it on the hood anyways because he kept donating money. Calls me up and asks me a few questions about his Jeep, and I answered them. And he says, "Will you take more money?" And I said to him, I said, "You really don't have to twist my arm. We're doing the best we can to pull this together." And he immediately sent me another few $100s towards the trip. So we ended up stenciling this hood with all of these names and the name of the school and the name of all the families and customers and stuff who donated. Meanwhile, we're researching camping gear. We're pulling everything together, and we're getting closer to our departure date, which I think was sometime mid-July, because the end of July, we had to, we were going to drive across the country with my newer Jeep, towing the World War II Jeep, and then then paired up with a couple friends who, my friend Joe Biedenkopf had built a CJ3B Jeep, which you have to look up pictures if you don't know Jeeps to see the differences. But he had retained the body, essentially, and then he had built a custom frame and designed his own custom vehicle, essentially. And then had a military trailer that he had put a hinged top onto and put a rooftop tent on top of that. So we had this. We were supposed to be leaving, I think originally on the Friday, but we had to move it to the Saturday. We were just going to start heading west and finding campgrounds as we could, and then meet in Dawson Creek, British Columbia on a certain day. Well, as we get to the week of, Junior has had, a month before, it had some transmission issues. And I think it was the Tuesday before we were supposed to leave. I'm running Mortimer in the shop, and my ex was there, and my ex was very against him having his engine swapped out because his old engine had this distinctive putt-putt that it would do. And she kept saying, she's like, this is a bad idea. And he's sitting there, 60 pounds oil pressure, which, if you know what that means a very happy engine. Sounds perfect, no putt-putt. And then it loses all oil pressure and starts sounding horrible. And I'm standing there going, oh God, we've just lost the brand new engine we put in here. A caveat: a couple years later, I took it apart. The kids did nothing wrong. It was a manufacturing issue. So I drive home, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I've got until Friday night to swap the old engine back into Mortimer, the old engine which had not been used for any distance runs of any sort, which was leaking oil like a sieve. And actually, I think a sieve isn't generous enough. I think it was leaking oil just like a total loss oil system. It was an environmental disaster. So I got home and
Like Crocs.
like what?
Crocs.
Why are Crocs an environmental disaster?
Not the environmental disaster part, but I'm thinking of the size of the holes and the way water can.
Oh yeah.
Crocs.
No, I could see that.
True that.
I was just thinking some of the southern highway departments in the country would appreciate the Jeep just drives along and oils, and they can go behind it and shovel the gravel on. And
Yeah. No, that would have worked great. So on the way home, I'm thinking about, okay, I've lost the engine, Mortimer. I've got to fix this, and I get up to a stop sign, and I go to accelerate, and Junior does this thing with his transmission where he fails to shift and then shifts so hard I felt like I'd just been kicked in my kidney by a horse. And so at this point, I don't know what's going on. And we seem to have possibly just lost the transmission in Junior. So I take Junior, drive him about a mile more, has the issue again, call up the shop that he'd been in. This is the Tuesday before we're supposed to leave. And end up driving him up to the shop and leaving him there. So the following morning, sort of pulling things together, getting ready to go down to my shop and swap the engines so Mortimer can at least have the leaky environmental disaster rather than the oil pressureless whatever was going on. And I get a call from the transmission shop. And the fellow tells me, he says, we cleared the codes. It's running fine now. We wouldn't take it more than 25 miles out of town, though. Just run it until it does it again so we can try and figure this out. And I was quiet, and I wasn't angry at them, even though they'd worked on it. It was because it's not their fault. There's so many things that can go wrong in a vehicle. And I just said to them, I said, essentially, I have a $25,000 lawn ornament. And the guy says, let me call you back. So about 15 minutes later, I get a phone call from this shop, and it's the owner, and he says, I'm going to explain things to you. He says, and you're going to say yes. Do you understand? And I said, yes. He says, if you ask any questions, everything is off. He says, do you understand? I said, yes. And he says, we realize that you're going to try and make it to Alaska in this Jeep with this transmission. He says, whether it's still doing this or not. He says, we want you to make it to Fairbanks. We know what you've been doing to fundraise for this trip. He says, to that end, he says, there is a Chrysler rebuilt transmission on its way with a 30,000-mile warranty. If you break down anywhere on the way to Fairbanks, he says, get that. He says, you will get the Jeep to a dealership and they will repair it for you. He says, and there's a dealership in Fairbanks. He says, you will make it to Fairbanks. And he said, the Jeep will be ready Friday afternoon. There is no charge. Do you understand?
Wow.
And I said, yes. He says, we will see you Friday. And hung up the phone. And I sat there and I called up my dad, who was teary over the phone because he's just sitting there going, there are still people who do things like that? And so for the rest of the week, we spent in the shop just killing ourselves. Myself, my ex, our friend Richard, who was a mechanic who worked for me. And we got Mortimer running, not running fantastic, but running by Friday evening. And we were so running on fumes. It was Friday night. We hitched up Mortimer to the back of Junior, got Junior back to the farm I used to have, threw everything we had purchased in the back of Junior, and just realized we were going to, and a bunch of tools, and just realized there was a bunch of crap that we were going to have to figure out on the way. And I'm somebody who would prefer to like plan where I'm stopping and stuff, but we were just so worn out. It's just like, okay, no, we are definitely just winging it and finding campgrounds wherever we can and doing whatever we can to just get to Dawson by this date. And so Saturday morning, we woke up, got in the Jeep, drove to Mount Airy, met up with Joe Biedenkopf and his girlfriend at the time, and then we headed west.
And you weren't the only ones with reading the book. You weren't the only ones with these last minute incredible troubles.
No, there was
just
like
to even start.
there was like Dave Eilers. He and his wife had bought a DJ, which was a 2-wheel drive delivery Jeep, and I think they blew the engine on that. Bill Reese.
Only like a week or 2 weeks before the trip, also on the for the
Go.
Arlington?
Yeah, it was like they were maybe a month before. Bill Reese only finished his Jeep, I think, the night before he left, and he had taken this CJ5 that was that either had it was heavy duty because it either had a trencher on it or a digger on the or a boring tool on the back, something like that. So it had a dually rear end, like one of those big trucks. And then he'd gotten the idea to make a little teardrop vintage-style camper, also on a dually axle because it would look cool, which he would regret later. And they had converted this Jeep with a diesel conversion from a company out of Canada. And he literally finished it and started driving. Henry didn't make it. There was a pickup truck that I think the pickup truck got towed out there. And yeah, the guys on the west. Actually, we did have people close. I just remembered because we had guys up in Washington State.
Okay.
Because there was Marty and I forget his name off the top of my head, but Marty and used to have that TV show where the guy where he was MacGyver, make gadgets out of anything. You know, we had Marty and MacGyver. MacGyver was we called him MacGyver because he could fix anything with nothing on the road, and they were. I think they were building their Jeeps up to the last minute. And there was a couple other folks from Washington State that the next episode that we do on this trip, I'll go through and like list all the people who were involved and their vehicles and where they came from, because this was an insane crew. And just to give you a little bit of a teaser, I mean, we had like one guy who was driving his 1946 Jeep that he'd gotten, I think, in high school or college. We had guys from all over who had built these Jeeps. And then we had Hugo from Brazil, who had done the trip in 1956. It was either 55 or 56, and had driven from Sao Paulo, Brazil, with two friends in a Jeep all the way to Niagara, and then all the way to and up the Alaska Highway.
Oh wow.
Well, yeah, because he had done.
Yeah.
Did he do the Transatlantic? Or no, I mean, the Transamerica Highway?
Yeah.
So
I think they had it airlifted over the Panama Canal, but I will save that as a bit of a teaser for the next episode.
He also has a book, doesn't he?
Yes, he has a book, and I'll bring that up in the next episode too, because I've got a copy of that here, and it's in Portuguese and English. So that's a little bit of a teaser for the rest of the trip, and we will be bringing you more. I don't know how many episodes will come out of this, but just think about 28 days of driving with an absolutely amazing group of people.
And we'll try to put those episodes out in order. We won't try to Pulp Fiction it on you.
Yeah, no, those will come out in order. They won't necessarily be one right after the other, but yeah, we won't do our usual. Yeah, I like the Pulp Fiction term. All right, just want to thank everybody for listening. Does anybody have some closing thoughts to throw in?
It's getting to be a long night.
Yeah, no, it is. It's
Yes, it does seem like a Cody-approved afternoon of recording.
yes, yeah, that would be Cody. We might have made a longer one for you.
I will say, just because I've always heard these stories in bits and pieces here and there, but I just want to hear the stories straight from you, which is why I prefer this over the book, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense.
And so I'm really happy to finally get that full picture.
You know, I've never had a reason to actually do this in like a long spoken format before, but we've got this podcast and we're discussing detours and weird trips
Story time.
and people that we've met.
But you brought up an excellent point earlier, referencing, Dr. Jones, you wrote the book so you wouldn't have to remember it.
Yeah, that's it. So I've actually been sitting here with the book referring to things as I'm trying to, I wrote notes beforehand. But I guess we'll wind down for the evening. Thank you for listening with us, as always. And as always, we're going to say, if this makes you think of some insane road trip that you went on, and you want to write that down, or you want to do even a voice recording and email it to us, you can contact us at merlinsbarn@gmail.com. We also have the Merlin's Barn Instagram, the Merlin's Barn Substack, or you can get to me through the Hanson Mechanical WordPress. So there's a variety of ways to find us. We would love to hear your stories. And we'll be back with you soon from Fort Blanket, south of the Yukon.
Have a great evening.
Good night,
Good
all.
night.